"Get out of the way!" Preston Hayes barked, shoving the heavy glass door open with more force than necessary. Eleonora Santos, known to everyone simply as Nora, was on her hands and knees, the worn fabric of her uniform pressing against the cold marble floor of the lobby. The bucket of murky water sat beside her, carefully placed to avoid being a hazard. It was 6 a.m., and the towering skyscraper in downtown Chicago was still mostly asleep, a silent giant waiting for the daily influx of ambition and stress. "Sorry, sir," she murmured, scrambling to her feet, her movements quick and practiced. "Sorry? You're blocking the entrance," Preston snapped, stopping directly in front of her. He adjusted the knot of his expensive silk tie, his gaze sweeping over her with undisguised contempt. "Isn't there another time to do this cleaning?" Nora clutched the damp cloth in her hands, the rough texture familiar and grounding. She knew his type well, the young executive, brimming with self-importance, who believed the world revolved around his schedule. "I always clean at this hour, sir. It's when there's the least amount of foot traffic." "Least traffic? I'm walking here, aren't I?" Preston took a step forward, invading her personal space. His cologne, a sharp, citrusy scent, was overpowering. "You people think you can do whatever you want just because you get here early." A few other employees, early risers like Preston, began to trickle into the lobby. They slowed their pace as they saw the confrontation, their eyes darting from the impeccably dressed executive to the woman in the simple grey uniform. No one said a word. "I'll finish up quickly," Nora said quietly, her voice even as she started to kneel again. "No, you won't," Preston said, and with a sudden vicious movement he kicked the bucket. The sound of the plastic bucket clattering against the marble floor was sharp and ugly. Water sloshed out, a dirty wave that soaked Nora from the knees down. The bucket rolled until it hit the far wall with a hollow thud. Nora froze, kneeling in the puddle of grimy water. Her simple uniform clung to her legs. Water dripped from her hair onto her face. A complete, suffocating silence fell over the lobby. A dozen people had now witnessed the act, but no one moved, no one spoke. They averted their eyes, adjusted their briefcases, and continued on their way, pretending they hadn't seen a thing. "There," Preston said, a cruel, satisfied smirk on his face. "Now you have some real traffic to clean up. Next time, think about the schedule." He strode towards the elevators, his expensive leather shoes stepping deliberately into the dirty water, leaving a trail of wet footprints on the pristine marble floor he so clearly valued. The other employees gave Nora a wide berth, their silence a form of complicity. Nora took a deep, steadying breath. This wasn't the first time she had been humiliated. It probably wouldn't be the last. She slowly got to her feet, picked up the empty bucket, and walked towards the utility closet to get more water and a mop. Ethan Cole stood leaning against the wall near the reception desk. He had arrived just a few minutes earlier and had seen the entire exchange. It was his third day at the company, a junior analyst position that was his first real step into the corporate world. He was still learning the layout of the building, the names of his colleagues, and the unwritten rules of this new environment. He watched Nora return with a full bucket and a mop. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't complain. She didn't cry. She simply started cleaning again, her movements methodical and efficient, as if nothing had happened. "Son of a bitch," Ethan muttered under his breath. He wanted to do something, should have done something, but he was the new guy. He didn't know anyone, didn't know the power dynamics, and now the moment had passed. It was too late. Nora passed the mop over the floor, erasing the dirty water Preston had spilled. Her movements were steady, unhurried, as if she had all the time in the world, as if she didn't care about the people who walked past her without so much as a good morning. Ethan got into the elevator with a few other employees. The silence was heavy, thick with unspoken judgment. Everyone had seen it. Everyone knew it was wrong, but everyone pretended it hadn't happened. "Is that Preston guy always like that?" Ethan asked quietly to the man next to him. "Always," the man replied with a shrug. "He's the son of the owner of the construction firm that has a major stake in this building. He does what he wants, and nobody does anything about it. Who's going to challenge him?" the man added, his voice resigned. "We all need our jobs." Ethan thought about that for the rest of the morning. He couldn't shake the image of Nora from his mind, soaked, humiliated, yet carrying herself with a quiet dignity that was more powerful than Preston's arrogance. At lunchtime, he went down to the lobby again. Nora was gone. She must have finished her shift and left, but Ethan could still see the scene replaying in his head. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling he would see Nora again, and the next time he would do something different, because he couldn't just stand by and watch anymore. That wasn't who he was, or at least it wasn't who he wanted to be. Ethan arrived home that evening with a heavy feeling in his chest. His small apartment was a chaotic landscape of unpacked boxes, a testament to his recent move to Chicago. He had been in the city for 3 weeks, but he still felt like a transient, as if he might have to leave at any moment. He grabbed a beer from the fridge and sank onto the sofa, but he couldn't stop thinking about what he had witnessed that morning. Nora, soaked and humiliated, and everyone else, including himself, pretending not to see. "What a mess," he said to the empty room. His phone rang. It was Mrs. Eleanor, his adoptive mother, calling from their small town in Wisconsin. "Ethan, my boy, how are you? Are you getting used to that big city yet?" "I'm fine, Mom," he lied. "Work is challenging, but I'm learning a lot." "Oh, I forgot to tell you," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "I sent another box with some of your old things. It should be arriving tomorrow or the day after." Ethan looked at the boxes already cluttering his living room. "You didn't have to do that, Mom. I don't have much space here. They're just memories, dear. Photos, documents, a few little things that might be important one day. You know I save everything." After he hung up, Ethan started rummaging through one of the boxes that had already arrived. Mrs. Eleanor really did save everything. School report cards, childhood drawings, old T-shirts, even his first pair of shoes. At the bottom of the box, he found a yellowed envelope filled with old photographs. Most of them were of him with Mrs. Eleanor and her husband, Mr. John, the only parents he had ever known. But one photo was different. It was a picture of him as a very small child, maybe 5 or 6 years old, sitting on the lap of a woman he didn't recognize. She was a dark-haired woman with a wide, warm smile, wearing a simple dress. Behind them was a landscape that looked like it could be somewhere in the rural south, with small houses and a bright, harsh sun. Ethan turned the photo over. On the back, written in neat cursive, were the words, "Mrs. Maria Waziro, 1996. Mrs. Maria. He didn't remember the name, the woman, or the place. He picked up his phone and called his mother back. "Mom, I found a photo here. It's of me on the lap of a woman named Mrs. Maria in a place called Juazeiro. Do you remember who she was?" On the other end of the line, Mrs. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "Oh dear," she said finally, her voice soft. "That's a complicated story." "What story?" "Mrs. Maria was a very good woman who helped children from the south. She was the one who brought you to us when you were little." "Brought me? What do you mean? You don't remember anything from that time, do you? It's probably for the best. Mrs. Maria took care of boys who didn't have families or whose families couldn't raise them. She would find good families up north to adopt the children." Ethan looked at the photo again, trying to recall anything, a sound, a smell, a feeling, but there was nothing. "And what happened to her?" "I don't know, dear. After you came to live with us, we lost contact. But she was a saint, that woman. She saved the lives of so many children." The next morning, Ethan put the photo in his wallet. He didn't know why, but he felt it was important to carry that piece of his past with him. At work, he tried to focus on spreadsheets and reports, but his mind was divided between the photo and Nora. 2 women who seemed to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders without complaint. At lunchtime, he went down to the lobby, hoping to see Nora again. She was there, cleaning the glass doors at the entrance. This time Ethan didn't hesitate. "Excuse me," he said, approaching her. Nora turned, surprised. She wasn't used to executives speaking to her, especially not after what had happened the day before. "Yes, sir? My name is Ethan. I work here at the company. I wanted to show you something, if you don't mind." Nora was suspicious, but she nodded. Ethan took the photo from his wallet and showed it to her. "Do you know this woman, Mrs. Maria from Huazero?" Nora looked at the photo, and her expression changed completely. Her eyes filled with tears, and she had to lean against the wall for support. "My God," she whispered. "Where did you get this?" "It's a photo of me when I was a child. Why? Did you know her?" Nora took the photo with both hands, as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. "She was my mother," Nora said, her voice trembling. "Mrs. Maria was my mother." Now it was Ethan's turn to be speechless. "You were one of the boys she helped bring to the north," Nora continued, wiping away her tears. "She always talked about you all. She said one day she would find you again." Ethan felt the world spin. The woman who cleaned the floors of the company where he worked was the daughter of the person who had saved his life. "Your mother, where is she?" Nora handed the photo back, a sad smile on her face. "She passed away 8 years ago. Cancer. But she died happy, knowing she had helped so many people have a better life." The two of them stood there in silence, processing the impossible discovery. In the following days, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with Nora. Whenever he saw her in the lobby or the hallways, he felt a strange mixture of gratitude and curiosity. She remained invisible to everyone else, but to him, she had become the most important person in that building. Preston, on the other hand, seemed to be getting worse every day. During a meeting, he yelled at his secretary because she hadn't been able to book a lunch reservation he wanted. The following week, he caused a scene in the elevator because the security guard took 2 seconds too long to press the button for his floor. "Do you people have any idea who you're dealing with?" he sneered at the guard. "I could have half this company fired if I wanted to." Ethan was in the elevator and saw the whole thing. The guard, a man in his 60s, just lowered his head and apologized. Another public humiliation that everyone pretended not to see. "That guy is sick," Ethan commented to a colleague from accounting. "He's the son of the owner of Hayes Construction," the colleague explained over coffee. "They own 40% of the holding company here. His father, Mr. Anthony, is a good man, but the son has turned into a monster. And no one says anything to the father. Who's going to? Mr. Anthony hardly ever comes here anymore. They say he's sick, and Preston makes sure everyone knows he's going to inherit everything." Ethan started paying more attention to the company's details. He discovered that the holding company controlled several smaller businesses: Hayes Construction, 2 logistics companies, a tech firm, and a general services company. It was a large enterprise with hundreds of employees. But what intrigued him most was Nora. She knew every corner of the building, knew everyone's name, from the executives to the security guards. Whenever someone needed information about something that had happened in the company, they always ended up asking her. "How long has Nora been here?" Ethan asked the receptionist one day. "Oh, forever. She started cleaning the offices, then became the cleaning supervisor, and now she takes care of the whole building. A hard-working woman. She knows everything that goes on here." "Does she have a family?" "Not that I know of. She lives alone. They say she took care of a wealthy old woman for a long time before she came to work here." That piece of information stuck in Ethan's head. A cleaning lady who had taken care of a wealthy old woman. It seemed strange. During his lunch break, he went to find Nora. He found her in the supply closet, organizing cleaning materials. "Nora, can I talk to you for a minute?" She turned, still a little wary. Ever since they had discovered their connection through Mrs. Maria, Ethan had been trying to strike up conversations with her, but Nora always kept her distance. "Of course, Mr. Cole." "Please, stop with the Mr. Cole. We practically grew up together." Nora smiled for the first time since they had met. "It's strange to think about it, isn't it? My mother always said she would find you all again. I just never imagined it would be like this. Like what? You, successful in a suit and tie, and me, well, cleaning the floor you walk on. Ethan felt a pang in his chest. Don't say that. It's honest work. There's nothing shameful about it. I know. My mother taught me that. But it's funny how life puts people in different places, isn't it? Nora, can I ask you something a little personal? She nodded. The receptionist said you took care of a wealthy lady before you came to work here. What was that like? Nora was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much she could say. Mrs. Albertina, I took care of her for 12 years. She was a very lonely woman, with a lot of money but no family. When she passed away, I was a bit lost. Then I got this job here. Did she treat you well? She did. In the end, she said I was like a daughter to her. She even... Nora stopped mid-sentence. Well, that doesn't matter anymore. Ethan could tell she was hiding something, but he didn't want to press. The important thing is that you're a good person. Your mother would be proud. Nora smiled again, but this time it seemed sad. I hope so. That afternoon, Ethan decided to do some research on the company. He wanted to better understand the corporate structure, who the owners were, how decisions were made. That's when he found a piece of information that intrigued him. On the list of shareholders of the holding company, besides Hayes Construction with its 40%, there were several other smaller companies. One of them caught his eye. HS Santos Investments with 15% of the shares. HS Santos. Helena Santos. It couldn't be a coincidence. Ethan spent the entire night researching HS Santos Investments. He couldn't find much. It was a holding company registered 8 years ago, with no website and no public information beyond the basics. But the owner's name was there, clear as day, Eleonora Santos, the same Nora he saw cleaning the floors every day. The next morning he arrived at the office early. He had to clear this up. He went down to the lobby and found Nora in the supply closet, organizing cleaning products. Nora, I need to talk to you. It's important. She could tell from the serious tone of his voice that something was wrong. What happened? HS Santos Investments. That's you, isn't it? Nora stopped what she was doing. For a few seconds, she was completely still. Then she let out a long sigh, as if she knew this day would eventually come. How did you find out? I saw it on the list of shareholders for the holding company. 15% of the shares. Nora, that means you're the second largest shareholder in the company. Yes, she said, sitting down on an old chair in the closet. Right after Hayes Construction. Ethan's jaw dropped. He couldn't process the information. But how? Why are you working here as a cleaner if you own part of the company? Nora looked at her own calloused hands, hands that had seen years of hard work. Mrs. Albertina, the lady I took care of, she had no children. When she passed away, she left me some money and some shares in companies she had invested in. This holding company was one of them. And you decided to increase your stake? Over time, yes. Some of the smaller partners wanted to get out of the business, and they sold their shares cheap. I started buying them up slowly, without anyone noticing. Mrs. Albertina's lawyer helped me set up HS Santos so my name wouldn't appear directly. Ethan sat down on a cardboard box, trying to understand. But why do you keep working as a cleaner? You could be in the boardroom, making decisions. Nora smiled, but it was a different kind of smile. It wasn't the shy smile she usually gave. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. I was raised to see far, Ethan, even without binoculars. Where I come from, you learn that you don't have to shout to be heard. In this company, only the ones who shout, who make a scene, get noticed. I prefer to observe. Observe what? Everything. How people treat those they think are beneath them. How they act when they think no one important is watching. You learn a lot about a person's character when they think you're invisible. Ethan began to understand. Nora wasn't just a cleaner who had inherited money. She was a strategist. A woman who had chosen to stay in the shadows to see the truth behind the facade. And what have you seen so far? I've seen that there are a lot of good people in this company. Honest, hard-working people who deserve respect. And I've seen that there are people who think they can step on others just because they have a fancy title. She didn't have to say the name. They both knew who she was talking about. Preston has no idea who you are. He doesn't even know I exist. To him, I'm just another piece of furniture in the company, someone who cleans up the messes he makes. Nora, you have the power to change things here. Why don't you use it? She stood up, picked up a cloth, and started wiping a shelf that was already clean. Power without wisdom is dangerous, Ethan. My mother taught me that. She could have gotten rich selling children to any family that would pay, but she chose carefully. She looked for real families, people who would love and care for you all. And what does that have to do with the company? Everything. It's no use for me to march into the boardroom and fire everyone I don't like. That doesn't solve anything. People have to learn. They have to truly change. Otherwise, I just become like Preston, only on the opposite side. Ethan was impressed by her wisdom. Nora had spent years observing, learning, waiting for the right moment. But what if things get worse? What if Preston keeps humiliating people? Nora stopped cleaning and looked at him directly. Then I'll have to make a decision. But when I do, it will be at the right time, in the right way. Not out of anger or revenge, but for justice. And when will that right moment be? When he crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. When he hurts someone in a way that can't be undone. Ethan left that conversation with the certainty that he was witnessing something much bigger than he had imagined. Nora wasn't just a wealthy cleaner. She was a strategist, a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. And he had a feeling that the moment she was waiting for was coming soon. Things started to go downhill quickly for Preston. In 2 weeks, he managed to create 3 major crises in the company. First, he cancelled an important contract with a materials supplier because the manager didn't answer the phone on the first try. The company had to pay a penalty and scrambled to find another supplier. Then he fired 2 employees from the accounting department because they questioned a strange expense he had made. The problem was, they were right. Preston had used the corporate card to pay for a personal trip. Finally, he held a meeting with the managers where he yelled at everyone, called them incompetent, and said he was going to clean house if things didn't improve. "Do you think this is a game?" he bellowed in the conference room. "I was born into this company. You are all employees, and employees obey or they hit the street." Ethan was in that meeting. He saw experienced colleagues, people who had worked there for over 10 years, leave the room with tears in their eyes. "That guy has lost his mind," a colleague commented later. "He thinks he owns the place." "Someone has to do something," Ethan replied. "Who?" "His father doesn't come here anymore. The board only meets once a year. We're at his mercy." But Ethan remembered his conversation with Nora. She had said she was waiting for the right moment. Maybe that moment had arrived. That afternoon he went to find her in the supply closet. "Did you see what happened in the meeting today?" "I did," she replied, without stopping her organizing. "So? Is it time?" Nora sighed. "Not yet. He's attacking the employees, but he still hasn't crossed the line that can't be uncrossed." "What is that line?" "You'll know when it's time." 3 days later, Ethan found out what that line was. Preston arrived at the office early in the morning, visibly agitated. He had been drinking the night before and was hungover. When he got into the elevator, he ran into Mr. Joseph, the oldest security guard in the company. "Why is this elevator so slow?" Preston complained. "Sorry, Mr. Hayes, it seems to be having a technical problem today." "A technical problem? You people can't even take care of an elevator. How are you supposed to take care of security?" Mr. Joseph tried to explain that he had already called maintenance, but Preston didn't want to hear it. "You know what? You're too old for this job. You should retire and make way for someone younger." "But sir, I still have 5 years until retirement." "So what? I can fire you today if I want to." The elevator stopped on the 10th floor, and Mr. Joseph got out, his head bowed. He was 65 years old and had worked there since the company was founded. He was respected by everyone. Ethan saw the whole scene and felt his blood boil, but the worst was yet to come. At lunchtime, Preston went down to the lobby and found Nora cleaning the floor near the reception desk. "You there!" he shouted. "Come here!" Nora approached, holding the cloth in her hands. "Yes, sir. This floor is a disgrace. Don't you know how to clean properly?" Nora looked at the floor, which was gleaming. "I just cleaned it, sir." "You just cleaned it? It's dirty." Preston stomped his foot hard on the wet floor, deliberately leaving a mark. "Now it's even dirtier. Clean it again." Nora took a deep breath and started cleaning again. "Slower," Preston ordered. "I want to see you really putting in some effort." A few people stopped to watch. It was a public humiliation and everyone knew it. "You know what your problem is?" Preston continued. "You people think you can slack off because no one complains, but that doesn't work with me. I demand quality." Nora continued to clean in silence. "In fact, since I'm talking about quality, I think it's time to change the cleaning staff. Hire a third-party company. It'll be cheaper and they'll do a better job." That's when Nora stopped cleaning and looked at him directly. "Are you sure about that, sir?" "I am, and I don't like being questioned by a cleaner." Nora stood up slowly. "Then I think it's time we had a conversation. In a board meeting." Preston burst out laughing. "A board meeting? Have you lost your mind?" "No, sir. I am a shareholder of this company. I have the right to a voice and a vote on the board." The smile vanished from Preston's face. "Are you kidding me? I don't joke about business. I am requesting an extraordinary board meeting for this afternoon. You will receive the official summons in an hour." Nora gathered her cleaning supplies and walked out of the lobby, leaving Preston standing there, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Ethan watched it all from a distance and felt a shiver run down his spine. Nora had waited for the right moment, and now the war had begun. The news of the extraordinary board meeting spread through the company like wildfire. Within 2 hours, everyone knew that a mysterious shareholder had called a meeting to discuss inappropriate conduct in management. Preston spent the entire afternoon trying to find out who this shareholder was. He called the company's lawyer, the accountant, everyone who might have information. No one could explain it. "H.S. Santos Investments," the accountant said over the phone. 15% of the shares, a company registered 8 years ago, always up to date with all its obligations. "But who owns it? I can't give you that information over the phone, Mr. Hayes. But the person will be at the meeting at 5 o'clock. Preston slammed his fist on the desk. "New partner, old shareholder, they're all puppets," he yelled at a junior executive who had come to deliver some reports. "I run this place. My father founded this company." The executive left the room without a word, but inside, he was curious to see what would happen. At 4:30 p.m., the boardroom was already filling up. The chairman of the board, Mr. Ramalho, was there, along with representatives from the other partner companies, some important managers, and Preston, who couldn't stop pacing back and forth. "Where is this so-called shareholder?" he asked every minute. "They should be arriving soon," Mr. Ramalho replied patiently. Ethan had managed to get permission to attend the meeting as an observer. He knew what was going to happen, but his heart was still pounding. At 5 o'clock sharp, the secretary knocked on the door. "Mr. Ramalho, the representative from H.S. Santos has arrived. Send them in." The door opened slowly. Nora walked into the room, carrying a brown leather briefcase and wearing a simple but elegant navy blue suit. She had her hair styled, was wearing a touch of makeup and had on dress shoes. It was the same Nora as always, but at the same time she was a completely different person. A complete silence fell over the room. Preston went as white as a sheet. "Good afternoon," Nora said, her voice firm and calm. "My name is Eleonora Santos. I'm the owner of H.S. Santos Investments and a shareholder of this holding company with 15% of the common stock." Mr. Ramalho stood up, clearly surprised. "Mrs. Santos, please, have a seat. We weren't expecting—" "I know. You weren't expecting the building's cleaner to be a shareholder," Nora completed, sitting down in the empty chair. "But life is full of surprises." Preston remained standing, looking shocked. "This is a joke. She can't be a shareholder. She cleans the floors." "Mr. Hayes, please sit down," Mr. Ramalho requested. "We will verify Mrs. Santos's documentation and then proceed with the meeting." Nora opened her briefcase and took out a stack of organized documents. "Here are the share certificates, the company's registration, the balance sheets from the last few years, and the payment receipts for all the dividends. Everything is in order." The company's lawyer took the documents and began to check them one by one. After 10 minutes, he nodded at Mr. Ramalho. "Everything is correct. Mrs. Eleonora Santos has the right to a voice and a vote on this board." "Perfect," Nora said. "Then let's get to the reason for this meeting." She took out a thick report from her briefcase and began to distribute copies to everyone. "This is a detailed report on the inappropriate conduct of a member of this company's management, conduct that is harming the work environment, productivity, and the company's image." Preston finally managed to sit down, but he was trembling with rage. "What are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing. I'm presenting facts," Nora replied, keeping her voice calm. "Cancellation of contracts for personal reasons, resulting in fines. Use of the corporate card for personal expenses. Unjustified dismissals. Public humiliation of employees." She turned the pages of the report, showing dates, names, amounts. "It's all here, with witnesses, documents, and receipts." Mr. Ramalho flipped through the report, impressed. "Mrs. Santos, how did you get all this information?" Nora smiled for the first time since she had entered the room. "Sir, when you're invisible, people do everything in front of you. They say what they shouldn't say, do what they shouldn't do, and treat people poorly because they think no one important is watching." She looked directly at Preston. "But someone is always watching. Someone is always paying attention." Preston tried to defend himself, stammering, speaking loudly, but Nora continued to present the facts with calm precision. It was the end of his reign, and everyone in the room knew it. "This is a setup," Preston shouted, slamming his hands on the table. "She made all this up. A cleaner trying to take me down." "Mr. Hayes, please maintain your composure," Mr. Ramalho requested, his voice now showing irritation. Nora remained seated, calm, as if Preston's outburst were just a distant noise. "May I continue?" she asked politely. "Of course, Mrs. Santos. Please proceed." She turned a page in the report. Page 15. On March 12th, Mr. Hayes fired an employee, Marina Costa, because she questioned an expense of $8,000 at a luxury restaurant. The expense was made on a Sunday when the company was closed and there were no clients or suppliers present. The company's accountant, who was in the meeting, nodded. "That's true. I questioned that expense as well, but Mr. Hayes said it was for networking." "Networking alone?" Nora asked, showing the receipt. "Because it says here it was for 2 people only." Preston was red with rage. "I don't have to explain my expenses to a cleaner." "Yes, you do." Mr. Ramalho interrupted, losing his patience. "Mrs. Santos is a shareholder. You have to explain." "Yes." Nora continued, flipping through the report. Page 22, cancellation of the contract with the supplier, our partner for 8 years, because the manager didn't answer the phone on the first try. The result, a $60,000 fine and a delay in the mall construction project. They were disrespectful. Preston tried to defend himself. "The manager was in the hospital having emergency surgery," Nora retorted. "I called the company and they confirmed it. You didn't even bother to ask why he didn't answer." With every page Nora turned, Preston seemed to shrink further in his chair. The other board members exchanged worried glances. Page 36, Nora continued, threat of dismissal to Mr. Joseph Ferreira, a security guard who has been with the company for 15 years, because of a technical problem with the elevator that was not his responsibility. That was just a reprimand, Preston protested. You said, and I quote, "You're too old for this job. You should retire and make way for someone younger. I can fire you today if I want to." Nora read directly from her notes. That's not a reprimand. That's workplace harassment. Mr. Ramalho closed the report he was reading. Mrs. Santos, what do you propose we do? Everyone in the room fell silent, waiting for her answer. Preston was sweating. Ethan felt his heart pounding in his ears. Nora closed her briefcase and looked at each person at the table. I could ask for Mr. Hayes's immediate dismissal. I have enough votes for that, considering that 3 of the smaller shareholders have already approached me in recent months complaining about his management. Preston opened his mouth to protest, but Nora held up a hand. But I'm not going to do that. Everyone was surprised, including Ethan. It would be too easy to just fire him, Nora continued. That doesn't teach anything. It doesn't solve the underlying problem. What is your proposal then? Mr. Ramalho asked. Nora stood up and walked to the window of the room, which overlooked the lobby where she cleaned the floor every day. Mr. Hayes's problem isn't a lack of competence, it's a lack of humility. He's never come down from his high horse. He's never known the ground floor. She turned to face Preston directly. My proposal is that Mr. Hayes be removed from his executive management position for 6 months. During that period, he will work directly with the company's operational sectors. He will get to know the work of each employee firsthand, from cleaning to security. That's humiliating, Preston shouted. No, Nora replied calmly. It's an education. You will learn to value the work of every person here. You will understand that everyone has their importance. And if I refuse, then I will ask for your immediate dismissal, and this time I'm sure I'll have the necessary votes. Mr. Ramalho looked at the other board members. Let's vote. Who is in favor of Mrs. Santos's proposal? One by one, the hands went up. In the end, there were 6 votes in favor and only 1 against. Preston's. Proposal approved, Mr. Ramalho announced. Mr. Hayes, you have 48 hours to report to the Human Resources Department and receive your new assignments. Preston sat in his chair, his head bowed, unable to speak. Nora gathered her documents in her briefcase. A productive meeting, she said. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to work. She left the room, leaving everyone in silence. Ethan followed her into the hallway. Nora, why didn't you ask for his dismissal? She smiled, and this time it was the smile of the humble cleaner he knew. Because my mother taught me that everyone deserves a chance to become a better person, even people like Preston. 3 weeks after the board meeting, the company felt like a different place. Preston had disappeared from the main corridors. No one heard shouting coming from the executive offices anymore. The employees began to relax, to talk more loudly, to smile in the elevators. Ethan was curious to know how Preston's training was going. He found out that he was starting in the most basic sector, cleaning and maintenance. He's working with the maintenance crew, a colleague told him during lunch. The first day, he showed up in a suit and dress shoes. The supervisor sent him to change, said he was going to sweat a lot. And how did he react? Complained, of course. But he had no choice. Either he did it, or he was fired. Ethan ran into Nora in the lobby at her usual time, cleaning. How's it going with Preston? Slowly, she replied, mopping the floor with precise movements. He still thinks this is a temporary punishment. He hasn't understood that it's about learning. Does he talk to you? He doesn't talk to anyone. He does his work in silence with a sour face, but at least he does it. 2 weeks later, Ethan noticed the first change. Preston passed him in the hallway and nodded. He didn't say hello, didn't smile, but he nodded. It was more than he had done in the last 2 years. Looks like the medicine is starting to work, Ethan commented to Nora. It's still early. Real change takes time. But the small changes continued to appear. Preston started arriving earlier and leaving later. He stopped wearing expensive suits every day. Sometimes he would show up in a simple shirt and jeans. One day, Ethan saw a scene that surprised him. Preston was helping Mr. Joseph, the security guard, carry some heavy boxes. The two of them were talking quietly, unhurriedly. "I'm sorry for what I said that day," Ethan heard Preston say. "About you being too old for the job. That was a stupid thing to say." "Forget it, Mr. Hayes," Mr. Joseph replied. "Everyone says stupid things when they're stressed." Ethan was impressed. Preston had apologized, something he had never done in his life. Another week passed. Preston's change was becoming more visible. He greeted employees by name, held the door for people, and sometimes even chuckled at a joke. "He's becoming human," a colleague observed. But the final test came when Preston returned to the cleaning sector, working directly with Nora. The first day, he was quiet, just following her instructions. The second day, he started asking questions about how to clean properly, what products to use, how to organize the materials. On the third day, something unexpected happened. Ethan was passing through the lobby when he saw Nora and Preston cleaning the glass doors at the entrance. Nora was teaching him the correct technique to avoid streaks. "You have to make circular motions first, then wipe the squeegee vertically," she explained patiently. "Oh, I see," Preston said, trying to follow her instructions. "There you go, now you're getting it." That's when an executive from a partner company, someone Preston knew from his management days, walked in. The man looked at Preston with surprise and a certain disdain. "Preston? What are you doing here?" Preston stopped cleaning. For a second, Ethan saw the old Preston return. The shame, the anger, the urge to shout that this was temporary. But Nora continued to clean beside him, calm, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "I'm learning," Preston replied after a moment. "Learning how to really work." The executive looked confused and walked away. Nora looked at Preston with something that seemed like approval. "Good answer. It's the truth," he said, returning to cleaning the glass. "I never knew how to really work. I always thought giving orders was working." On the Friday of that week, Ethan had to say goodbye. He had been promoted and transferred to the company's other branch. It was a good opportunity, but he would miss watching the company's transformation. He went to find Nora at the end of the day. "I came to say goodbye. I'll be in the other office next week." "Congratulations on the promotion," she said, smiling. "Your adoptive mother would be proud." "Nora, can I ask you a question that's been bugging me?" "Of course. Did you ever think about becoming the president of the company? With everything you know, with the influence you have?" Nora stopped arranging the cleaning products and looked at him. "True power doesn't need a golden name tag, Ethan. You just have to know how to use it without destroying anyone." She picked up her bucket and prepared to leave. "Besides," she added with a smile, "who says I'm not already the president? Just because I'm not sitting in a fancy office doesn't mean I'm not in charge." Ethan laughed. Nora was right. She ran that company in a way no executive ever could. Through respect, through wisdom, through example. "Take care of Preston," he asked. "I will. He still has a lot to learn, but I think he'll be okay." Ethan waved one last time and left. He knew he was leaving the company in good hands, in the hands of a woman who had learned to see far, even without binoculars. 6 months later, Nora was walking through the same lobby where it had all begun. The place looked the same, but the atmosphere was completely different. People smiled more, talked to each other, and no longer walked through the hallways in fear. "Good morning, Mrs. Nora," greeted Mr. Joseph, who was at the front desk. "Good morning, Mr. Joseph. How's the family?" "Good, thank you. My granddaughter got into college. Remember I told you?" "I remember. Give her a hug for me." Nora continued walking, stopped in front of the elevators, and saw Preston getting out of one of them. He was wearing a simple dress shirt and carrying a briefcase. "Nora, good morning," he said, and it sounded sincere. "Good morning, Preston. How was the meeting with the suppliers?" "Good. We managed to renegotiate the contract with the supplier from São Paulo. They agreed to work with us again." Nora smiled. Preston had returned to the management team the week before, but he was a completely different executive. His 6 months working in the operational sectors had changed not only his behavior, but his way of thinking. And the new cleaning crew, how are they adapting? Good too. I trained them myself. I learned from the best, he said, referring to Nora. That's good. Quality work starts at the foundation. Preston nodded and went to his office. Nora continued her walk through the lobby. She was no longer a cleaning employee. After her identity as a shareholder was revealed, it would have been strange to continue cleaning the floors, but she hadn't taken on any official executive role. She preferred to define herself as a special consultant, someone who circulated through the company, observed, talked to people, and gave opinions when necessary. In the end, she was still doing what she had always done, seeing everything, taking care of everyone. Near the reception, she saw a young man, about 20 years old, mopping the floor. It was Carlos, her replacement in the cleaning sector. A good, hard-working boy who was studying business at night. Nora approached him. "How are you, Carlos?" "Good, Mrs. Nora. Thank you for asking." She observed his work. Neat, organized, done with attention to detail. "You're doing a good job." "Thank you. You taught me well." Nora smiled. She had trained Carlos personally before leaving the position. "Remember what I told you on the first day?" "I remember. It doesn't matter what job you do. It matters how you do it." "That's right. And you're doing it very well." Nora was preparing to go up when she saw a young executive approaching. He was wearing an expensive suit and had an arrogant expression on his face. He was new to the company, had started the week before. "Hey, you there," the executive called out to Carlos. "This floor is dirty." Carlos looked at the floor he had just cleaned. "Sorry, sir, but I just mopped it. Where is it dirty?" "Here." The executive stomped his foot hard on the wet floor, deliberately leaving a mark. "Now it's dirty. Clean it again." Nora felt a familiar sensation. It was like watching a movie she had already seen. "Excuse me," she said, approaching the two of them. The executive looked her up and down. He saw a middle-aged woman without a suit, without an ID badge, and automatically classified her as someone unimportant. "Who are you?" "Eleonora Santos," she replied calmly. "And you are Leonardo Ferraz, the new commercial director. And you didn't answer me. Who are you?" Nora smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "I own 15% of this company. I am the second largest shareholder, and I'm also someone who doesn't like to see employees being mistreated." Leonardo went pale. I didn't know." "Now you do," Nora interrupted. "And since you do, how about we have a little chat in HR? I'm sure they'll be interested to hear how you treat the staff." Leonardo started to stammer apologies, but Nora was no longer interested in him. She turned to Carlos. "Carlos, if anyone ever tries to humiliate you again, you come talk to me, okay?" "Okay, Mrs. Nora. Thank you." She picked up the bucket that was on the floor and lifted it slightly for Carlos to pass. "Watch your step," she said, looking directly at Leonardo. "This is where the great ones are made." Nora went on her way, leaving the embarrassed executive behind. She got into the elevator and went up to the top floor, where the boardroom was. Not because she had a meeting, but just because she liked to look at the city from the window and think about how things changed. Downstairs in the lobby, Carlos continued his work. Neat, organized, done with dignity. Leonardo never bothered another employee again, and Nora continued to be who she had always been, discreet, unshakable, a giant, a woman who knew how to see far, even without binoculars, and who taught others to do the same. Because in the end, it doesn't matter where you are. It matters who you are. And Eleonora Santos knew exactly who she was.